Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. And if you'd like to join our late night national conversation, feel free. If you're on topic with our guest, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. If not, just hold your thought on whatever topic it'll be. For Open Phone America, that's the third hour of the show where you get to weigh in on absolutely any topic that you'd like, and the floor is yours. Now, I want to get into a couple of things. Tonight, we're going to talk about, what's going on with the Middle East, in particular, this fake, phony, fraud ceasefire that the Hamas folks are flirting with, saying they'd accept when we know they wouldn't. They've never called for a ceasefire because they want to fight. But anyway, I digress. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Marxists on college campuses because, wouldn't be a night without doing that. And, of course, there's plenty to discuss in Open Phone America later on. But right now I want to talk specifically about what happened today in Trump world, right? Today you have Stormy Daniels, who's said lots of different things. She's taken the stand, and she said a number of things today. Now, of course, Stormy Daniels is the adult film star that was paid off by Michael Cohen, $130,000. That's why Trump is in this world of hurt, right? Because they've decided to criminalize this action. And she was famously represented by a guy named Michael Avenatti. You may remember that. He earned the moniker creepy porn lawyer. I believe Tucker Carlson named him that, and it kind of stuck, and everywhere he went, he was labeled that. And he's in jail now for embezzling the funds of many of his clients. But now that he's in jail, he's had like a come-to-Jesus moment, if you will, and he's been saying a lot of things. And one of the things that Michael Avenatti is saying is that Stormy Daniels is falsifying records and committing fraud to avoid paying Trump. Listen to this. The attorney who once represented Stormy Daniels, again, being Michael Avenatti, says his former client likely committed fraud and falsified business records in an effort to conceal income and avoid legal fees that she owes President Trump. Because a lot of people don't realize, while he paid her this $130,000 way back when, they had a lawsuit. She lost. He won. He was awarded damages, and she never paid. So Michael Avenatti, who is in jail, I believe he's in jail. He posted a lengthy statement on Twitter that I'm supposed to say is now known as X, but I don't like saying that. I think everybody knows what Twitter is. There's never going to be another Twitter. So if we say Twitter for the next 10 years, everybody knows where it is. And he detailed his accusation and was asking whether Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg would be pursuing fraud and falsifying records charges against Ms. Daniels. Now, in June of last year, Mr. Avenatti says that film producer Sarah Gibson contacted him regarding a documentary about Stormy Daniels, and he was suspicious of Gibson's motives, so Avenatti says he recorded his conversations with her. If the production paid Daniels for her part, Avenatti said he suspected that it was going to be a puff piece to, benefit Miss Daniels. Avenatti claims that Gibson admits on the recordings that Daniels was indeed being paid. He goes on to claim that the producer misunderstood the intent of his question and proceeded to explain how the production and Daniels were hiding the payments to avoid seizure by Trump and his attorneys. Here's a quote. Among other things, she told me that they had fictionally optioned the rights to Daniels' book and then routed the money Daniels demanded through a fabricated trust that had been set up in the name of Stormy Daniels' daughter, Mr. Avenatti explained in his online statement. He added, all to hide the money from Trump and to avoid paying the judgment. This is the judgment that she owes him. Now, after losing multiple lawsuits to Trump, Daniels was ordered to pay nearly $1 million, actually $700,000 in legal fees to the former president. The National Pulse, which is where I'm reading from, they've reported in March of this year that Daniels stated she'd rather go to jail than pay the money she owes. So how about that? Even Michael Avenatti is saying that Stormy Daniels is shady. And, of course, the star witness, besides Stormy Daniels, who's going to go on the stand and say all sorts of things, is Michael Cohen, right? A convicted liar, right? A convicted perjurer. It's just interesting how this case with Trump is. So Trump turns around and asks for a mistrial. And, of course, that was denied. But it's just one of those things to me that I think it's going to end up happening anyway. And we had that discussion last night with Doug Burns where he indicated he agreed, former federal prosecutor and defense attorney. But I want you to hear a quick clip of former President Trump. He's there at the court, and he says, look, these people have no case against me. Listen to this.
This was a very big day. A very revealing day. As you see, their case is totally falling apart. They have nothing on books and records, and even something that should bear very little relationship to the case. It's just a disaster.
And, of course, he went on to say that he should really be out there campaigning instead of hanging out in a courtroom. Listen to this.
It's a disgrace. In the meantime, I'm stuck. I'm here. Instead of being in Georgia, instead of being in New Hampshire, instead of being in Wisconsin, and all the different states that we wanted to be in, we're not able to be there because we're stuck in this trial, which everyone knows is a hoax.
So, again, this Stormy Daniels testimony, everybody had been waiting for this. It's very anticipated. There's never been a trial like this against a former president. And it's obviously really, really, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, salacious, sensational, right? They really can hype this up and sell it in many different ways. And the hope was that this would be the big star witness. There's a photo here in the Associated Press report of President Trump sitting in the courtroom, looking very intently with a scowl on his face. And good for him. He should be doing that. He should. I got another one. Let's see. Listen to this quote. He said, "This is the kind of testimony that makes it impossible to come back from." Actually, it's his attorney. Excuse me. His attorney, Todd Blanche, said, "How can we come back from this in a way that it's fair to President Trump?" The judge rejected the request and said that defense lawyers should have raised more objections during the testimony. The Trump team later in the day used its opportunity to question Stormy Daniels to paint her as motivated by personal animus and profiting off of her claims against Trump. One of the questions that one of Trump's lawyers, Susan Nescheles, asked was, "Am I correct that you hate President Trump?" "Yes," she acknowledged. Daniels' statements are central to the case because in the final weeks of the 2016 Republican presidential campaign, the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, Michael Cohen, paid her $130,000 to keep quiet about what she says was an awkward and unexpected encounter with President Trump back in July of 2006. One that she's also said did not occur and that she was not honest about in a sworn statement. So her credibility is questionable. The other star witness has extremely questionable credibility. And I think you're going to need a lot more than the shoddy testimony of two very, very questionable people. One that owes Trump a bunch of money and admits that she hates him, and the other, his former lawyer who turned on him and was convicted of perjury. So let's see how this goes. But I think Trump's right. They're well on their way to, if they don't get the mistrial here, which the judge denied, I think that they might do really well on appeal. Anyway, folks, we're going to get to, when we get to the next segment, we're going to talk about what's going on with Israel from a bunch of different perspectives. So stick around. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And President Biden delivered his speech on anti-Semitism tonight as it's Holocaust Remembrance Day. And, of course, like any good politician, he offered some applause lines and platitudes and, moments where, it seems like he's on board. And President Biden was trying to reinforce what he believes is, this middle ground that he constantly talks about, where he's kind of on both sides of the issue. So he gives this speech, and we're going to get some analysis from it from Liora Rez. We have a clip of President Biden, and I'll tell you who Liora Rez is right after this. Check this out.
And as Jews around the world still cope with the atrocities and trauma of that day and its aftermath, we've seen a ferocious surge of anti-Semitism in America and around the world. Vicious propaganda on social media. Jews forced to keep their hide, their keepers under baseball hats, tuck their Jewish stars into their shirts. On college campuses, Jewish students blocked, harassed, attacked while walking to class. Anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic posters, slogans calling for the annihilation of Israel, the world's only Jewish state. Too many people denying, downplaying, rationalizing, ignoring the horrors of the Holocaust. And October 7th, including Hamas's appalling use of sexual violence to torture and terrorize Jews. It's absolutely despicable, and it must stop.
So that's just a clip of what President Biden's talking about, saying that the anti-Semitism must stop. But yet that doesn't change the way he's behaving towards Israel. So I want to get some reaction to his speech from, Liora Rez, Executive Director of Stop Anti-Semitism. She herself is a refugee who fled the former Soviet Union and is Jewish. Liora Rez, welcome to the program.
Hi, good evening. Thanks so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. So in listening to this clip, and obviously you've heard other parts of President Biden's speech tonight, does it come across as genuine in your best estimation?
So, I have to be honest, his remarks were on par. They seem sincere, but we're at a point in time where we're beyond commentary and words. We want to see some concrete action. We want to see the Department of Education investigate and take action against the anti-Semitic pro-terror hooligans on campus abusing Jewish and pro-Israel students. We want to see action and see the FBI investigate these professional agitators who are organizing illegal behavior across the country and the unlawful organizations funneling money to them. We want to see the DOJ prosecute organizations who are providing material support to international terrorist organizations. So while the words ring great, we want to see more and hear less, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. Actions speak louder than words. And I think that's always the case when you have something like International Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's going to be difficult for Biden or any politician, quite frankly, that is antagonistic towards Netanyahu to say something that would be, perceived as rude or unsupportive, because it would be uncouth. So they say all the right things, but they don't take the right actions.
Right. So unfortunately, Israel is in the middle of a war. It was brutally attacked 7 months ago on October 7th. There were over 200 individuals taken hostage into Gaza. 133 remain, including 5 U.S. citizens. 5 Americans have been subjected to hell for the past 7 months. These are fellow citizens, fellow community members, fellow neighbors. We don't feel there's enough attention being brought to that fact. Their names and faces should be recognizable, but unfortunately they're not. And this isn't the time to criticize Israel's prime minister. It's the country's in the middle of a war. Put your personal feelings aside and be on your allies' team. And do whatever is necessary to help end this horrifying situation.
Liora Rez, Executive Director of Stop Anti-Semitism. I want to underscore that this is, in my opinion, one of the most delicate things, right, that I think Biden has at his disposal is these relationships with allies. And we've seen his handling of these relationships, and they haven't gone well. With Ukraine, it's been a lot of money, but he hasn't done anything to stop this war. Same thing with Israel. There's been some arms sent, and there's been some aid, even though some of it was slowed down earlier this week. But again, there's still no, in my opinion, there's a lack of support. Would you agree that there's a lack of support, or do you think the support is appropriate from your perspective?
So while the wording is there, we want to see more action regarding this past weekend's rumors of halting of ammunition and necessary war equipment. Israel has us very concerned. Also, the messaging at times from President Biden is a little bit concerning when he flip-flops and tries to appease his radical base. When you're speaking about, again, 5 U.S. Americans being held hostage in Gaza, nobody wants to all lives matter it. And unfortunately, he does have a pattern of doing that. And, we'd like it to stop. Last time we checked, Hamas is not a democratic ally of the United States. It's a U.S. designated terror group. Israel, on the other hand, is one of the strongest allies to the United States amongst all world nations. And I think this administration really needs to step up and help Israel do everything possible to get its hostages back, to help decimate Hamas, and to put a stop to this war.
Liora Rez, Executive Director of Stop Anti-Semitism. Straight ahead, I want to get your reaction to another clip of what President Biden had to say about his commitment to Israel. Plus, I want to hear a little bit about your story in fleeing the former Soviet Union. Folks, don't go anywhere. We're coming right back with Liora Rez, Executive Director of Stop Anti-Semitism. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
The Jewish community, I want you to know, I see your fear, your hurt, and your pain. Let me reassure you, as your president, you're not alone. You belong. You always have and you always will. And my commitment to the safety of the Jewish people, the security of Israel, and its right to exist as an independent Jewish state is ironclad, even when we disagree.
So even when we disagree. Now, Liora Rez, this is, I think, the crux of the conversation is that there's a lot of disagreement, right? There's a lot of disagreement, I think, between the Biden administration and the Netanyahu team. And this is where it gets very cloudy, where he's saying we have an ironclad commitment, but we disagree. How do we reconcile that?
So here's the bottom line. Hamas wants to kill Jews. Jews don't want to be killed. So we're in a bit of a conundrum. Again, we don't need a repeat of the Holocaust. We just celebrated Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. As a granddaughter of Holocaust survivors, I was brought up with horrific stories of what happened to my own family. And just the fact that we're seeing this happen in America 2024 is just so shocking. So again, going back to your question in regards to the disagreements, Israel's goal is to get back its hostages, again, including 5 U.S. citizens, and to fully dismantle Hamas, which the U.S. government designated as a terror entity. So we're not sure why disagreements are even coming into play at this point. If we look back at the Iraqi war, if we look back, again, the war on terror after 9/11, there wasn't a quote-unquote disagreement in regards to getting rid of al-Qaeda. There wasn't a quote-unquote disagreement against getting rid of ISIS. These are terrorists. We need them gone from the world. Because as soon as they're done with Jews, they're going to come for Western societies. And that, as history has shown us, what ends with Jews, or what starts with Jews, never ever ends with Jews. From the Holocaust to the former Soviet Union, this kind of hatred engulfs modern Western values and societies. So, the U.S. government, the Biden administration, should be, hip to hip with the Israeli government's goal of dismantling the Hamas terror group and their entire network.
I agree. I agree with that. I'm just wondering, why the administration here in the United States doesn't agree with that and where these disagreements come from. Now, Liora Rez, tell us about your organization, Stop Anti-Semitism. I'm guessing you're focused on a whole lot of this right now. But what do you do when you're not focused on this particular issue, RE October 7th?
Right. So unfortunately, we definitely have our hands full for the past 7 months. But Stop Anti-Semitism was founded in 2018 as a response to increasing anti-Semitic sentiment and violence across the United States. We are a grassroots watchdog organization dedicated to exposing groups and individuals that espouse a hatred towards the Jewish people and state and engage in anti-Semitic behaviors. And
was this something that was directly related, this organization, was this something that you started because of your background coming from the former Soviet Union? Tell us about that.
So I had immigrated to the United States as a small child. I was 5. So obviously, when you're that young, you don't really conceptualize such a grandiose change in life, right? Literally moving across an ocean to a different continent. But growing up, again, always heard stories of family members who unfortunately didn't survive the Holocaust. My grandparents luckily survived the Holocaust. And just a focus on anti-Semitism and discrimination against the Jewish people was always a topic in my household. Never did I think that as a grown-up, I would see it for myself. I was very lucky growing up in the Midwest. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, after immigrating from the former Soviet Union. Very safe, loving area I was lucky enough to grow up in. So I wasn't a victim of anti-Semitism in my childhood. Again, very lucky. However, I started working in digital marketing and media around 2011, and the amount of anti-Semitism I was seeing pop up really, really started to bother me a little bit, when you get that kind of yuck feeling in your stomach. And as the years progressed, it really started to explode as social media was exploding, right? So if we look at the rise of social media around 2008, Facebook started. Then we have around 2010, 2011, Instagram really started to take off. Twitter was always there around that same time. And when you look at the manifestation of explosive growth of these platforms, it's almost neck and neck the amount of bigotry you see specifically related towards the Jewish people. And essentially in 2018, Stop Anti-Semitism was founded. And, I do want to preface by saying our focus is not only on social media. We work with different administrations across the country in regards to college campuses. We work with various corporations and HR departments regarding various anti-Semitic activity pertaining to policy and their employees. So we work the entire gamut. I will say, though, in the almost 6 years that we've been around, this level of bias, it's honestly unfathomable. We're talking pre-Holocaust level bigotry right now in certain sections of the country. It's startling, to say the least. It really is, especially coming from an area where we fled due to such an increased amount of anti-Semitism. So again, very startling that I'm seeing this now as an adult.
Yeah. Liora Rez, let everyone know how they can find your organization should they want to support the work you're doing.
Absolutely. Come visit us at stopantisemitism.org. There's a donate button. Also, we welcome Jews and our Christian allies to follow us on our social media channels. We're on Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, Stop Anti-Semitism. We're on Twitter, Twitter X, Twix as we like to call it, under Stop Anti-Semites. And we're on TikTok, so if you have any kids or grandkids, wanting to kind of see what's going on in the Jewish world, we like to create fun content, teachable fun content, I should say, on that platform. We welcome allies from all over in the fight, to stop anti-Semitism. Because again, as I stated before, what starts with Jews never ends with us, unfortunately.
Liora Rez, thank you for a great conversation. Executive Director of Stop Anti-Semitism. That's stopantisemitism.org. And I want to, again, thank you for your time. You are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. Have a good night.
You too. Thanks so much. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure. Folks, we come back to your phone calls if you want to chime in. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, to your calls we go. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Boise, Idaho. Check in with our buddy Paul. Go right ahead, Paul.
Good evening, Rich. Yeah, on Holocaust Remembrance Day, I spent some time studying the Holocaust as a man that's not Jewish. I was just very interested in how this could ever happen. And so what did happen was unspeakable in many things, including the most recent on October 7th. My heart goes out to the Jewish people, and I'd like to wish them Kaddish, so that they may say prayer for the dead and be at peace and know that evil is not going to win. It may have won this little tiny skirmish, but it's not going to win.
Well said, Paul. Thank you. Big shout to KBOI in Boise, Idaho. And, it reminds me of how interesting, right? You have callers that are saying, look, we are in line with Israel, right? Nobody should be put in ovens, mass graves, mass slaughters. It shouldn't happen. You shouldn't go kill little children, burn them alive, slit their throats. Goes without saying, right? I think most people agree. Most, not the guys in Hamas or those that support Hamas. But then you have these defenders that want to come out here and say, look, you know, in effect, this is what they're saying, right? They're reconciling the fact that you can do those things. And they say things like, well, you know, the Jews have been stepping on these people for so long. What do you think they were going to do, sit there and do nothing? Right? This is what they say. This is what the stuff I hear when people give me the pushback. They justify the killing of the infants, the raping of the women, the kidnapping of the teenage girls and the elderly grandmas. And then others try to make these intellectual arguments by saying things like, you know, the real issue here is that Zionism is bad and Zionism runs America and Zionism runs the banks and Zionism is the worst thing ever. And I've got to tell you, this is very, very incendiary stuff. It's a powder keg, in my opinion. And Mark Lamont Hill, if you don't know who he is, you can Google him. He's a real, I think the word is piece of work, right? He was at a rally today called Hands Off Rafah at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. And he gets into this because it's just a fascinating argument. And it's fascinating because it's so weak, in my opinion, but yet they'll do it time and again. Oppressor versus oppressed. Oppressor versus oppressed. Doesn't matter what the situation is, they will find some way to make the bad guy the oppressed, and that's what justifies them doing their bad stuff. Listen to this.
And don't let the media or anybody else have you think that when we say it's a principle struggle against Zionism, that we're talking about Judaism or that we're talking about Jewish traditions or Jewish cultures or Jewish ritual. No. We're talking about political Zionism. We are talking about the creation of a Jewish ethno-state in historic Palestine that dislocated and dispossessed indigenous Palestinian people, took their homes, took their land. That's right. That's what we're talking about. Palestine was always diverse. Palestine always had a Jewish presence. Palestine always had a Christian presence. Palestine always had a Muslim presence in the modern era. That ain't the issue. The issue is that at the end of the 19th century, we saw waves of European immigration that came not to share the land, not just to pursue freedom. And let's be honest, freedom was needed. Anti-Semitism is a global thing. Jew hate is pervasive everywhere, and it has been throughout history. Wherever Jewish people have been, they have been marginalized. They've been hated. They've been disrespected. They've been subjected to hatred and insecurity and perpetual victimhood. That ain't the problem. The problem is you cannot jump out of the burning buildings of Europe and land on the backs of Palestinian people in the region.
I guess Mr. Lamont Hill missed that whole Balfour Accord thing, right, where the UK cut that deal to get them this land. And this is, I guess, where, and it may be very insensitive. You know, I had a friend of Palestinian descent who used to send me messages, and we'd have these big talks, and I always landed in the same place saying, like, I don't know. This is probably a warped view of the world, but let's just say you own some property, right? You and your wife, you buy a home, you make a home with your children, then you and your wife get divorced. And this home is sold, right? But you thought you were going to have it forever, and now this land is taken away from you. I mean, is that not part of life, right? Isn't life sometimes unfortunate where circumstances change, the legal system is involved, and they come up with this division of assets through a divorce, and two attorneys go at it, and you finally reach a certain place, and you go, all right, that's it, it's over, right? We're going to do this, you're going to keep that, we're going to sell this, we're going to do this. And is that not what the Balfour Accord is, where they say, look, we're making a Jewish state, right? And the way he describes it, this ethno-Jewish state that inside of historic Palestine that dispossessed indigenous Palestinian people, took their homes and took their land. Is that not exactly what they were supposed to do? It wasn't like they had a war, right? They came in here. And this was part of the agreement. Yeah, and they've had a bunch of skirmishes since, for sure. and other wars. But this was on paper a deal. I mean, that's how I see this. And perhaps I'm wrong, but I just think that the history is there, and it's been there for quite some time. And to have a rally in Philadelphia right now today talking about this same exact thing, it's kind of like being divorced for 20 years and then turning around and be like, I used to own a house there. That house is my house, and I want to come back to that land. But you don't have the deed to that land anymore. Whether you like it or not, whether it was fair or not, there was a deal that was made. And the deal was done. And we have to move on. And I tried to present that to my friend, and he told me I just didn't get it, that I was just brainwashed by the Zionists. And I just throw my hands up because I'm just thinking, come on. In life, you can't win them all, and you can't fight for everything. You just can't. Anyway, folks, we continue with calls, analysis, a couple more audio clips when we return. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, we're back, and this Mark Lawn-Hill, he was in Philly, he's giving this speech, and again, Philly's one of those areas like New York City, like others, where it's ground zero for a lot of political movements, and, let's move back. Right before Easter, we saw the TikTok pastor, whose name is escaping me, and I had a tough time pronouncing it anyway, but the guy from the Orthodox Church who got stabbed in the face. And that was horrific. Well, now we have another one. This was yesterday, over the weekend. I wanted to mention it yesterday, but the time got the better of me. This is a church service in North Braddock, Pennsylvania. And everything stops when this man just walks right in. Like, they're videotape. Most sermons now, even small churches, they have streaming video of their sermon of the church service because a lot of people never came back after COVID. So they do like Facebook Live or whatever streaming service they're using. And there's some shut-ins and other older incapacitated people that used to struggle to get to church or use the church van that are just like, you know what, church isn't safe for me anymore. I might die of COVID because that's what, Dr. Fauci told them. So they don't come anymore. And you've got this gunman that comes in, and we have some audio of this. Listen to this.
We're in a whole different kingdom than God. And God had chose.
And there he is. The gunman walks in. The pastor goes running. One of the deacons starts wrestling him to the ground. This guy looks like he's on drugs. He shoots. The gun jams by the grace of God. There's a melee breaking out. They finally get the guy on the ground. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. Now, the Pennsylvania State Police have charged this man, Bernard Polite, of Braddock. They're saying that he just entered there to shoot the pastor, a guy named Glenn Germany. Absolutely insane. This happened at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Pennsylvania. KDKA country. Things are bad, folks. You can't blame Trump on this, right? Can't blame this one on Trump, that's for sure. Folks, straight ahead, we continue. We're going to talk about Marxism. We're going to talk about the latest film on January 6th in an upcoming segment. And a whole lot more. So stick with me. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 2 of the program. This is our Tuesday night edition, and the phone number if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-4825-337-833, the number 4, my last name, Valdez, and that is Valdez with an S. Now, a couple of things I want to get into. President Trump's classified records trial has been postponed indefinitely. TikTok is suing the U.S. government in an effort to stop the enforcement of their TikTok ban bill. We'll see how that plays out. You got a couple of American companies that look like they're making a play for TikTok. I don't know if that'll happen, but I hope that it does. And let's see. Trump deleted the post about a particular witness after being threatened with jail time over a gag order. And, you know, one of the things that's messed up about this is Trump says things like, oh, what a nice guy. And they'll say, hey, you're violating the gag order because you're talking about somebody that's involved in this, saying he's a nice guy. You know, it's not like there was any intimidation. He just said he was a nice guy. To me, it's really kind of heavy-handed the way they're treating this guy. It really, really is. Anyway, you've got the Federal Aviation Administration investigating into Boeing, and it reveals that these employees at Boeing may have falsified records. This is getting interesting. Then we've got Biden's core group of supporters. They're losing excitement about voting for him. That comes as no surprise. And another headline here. Some of the Democrats are paying over $500K to affirm that Judge Merchan, who's on the Trump case, where his daughter works. And these are Democrats that are all linked to George Soros organizations. And this is where I think the problem lies. Right? George Soros is just, you know, one famous bad guy or one famous Marxist globalist type. But there's plenty of them, right? There's plenty of them out there. And we see them on college campuses. We see them all over the place. And I think it all starts when they go to college and they meet that one professor that, you know, is wearing the cardigan and he's got the glasses at the tip of his nose and he sounds like he has a British accent. And we have a excerpt of the Communist Manifesto being read by John Ingram. And this is what they hear, right? They hear this, and it kind of romanticizes the ear. Check it out.
The history of all hitherto existing societies is the history of class struggles. Freeman and slave, patrician and plebeian, lord and serf, guildmaster and journeyman. In a word, oppressor and oppressed, stood in constant opposition to one another, carried on an uninterrupted, now hidden, now open fight. A fight that each time ended either in the revolutionary reconstitution of society at large or in the common ruin of the contending classes.
Now, again, that is an excerpt of the Communist Manifesto written by Karl Marx. And this is what really starts to, I think, really activate these Marxists. They fall in love with this oppressor versus oppressed type of mentality, this perpetual victimhood, and it gets them going. But there's a few warriors out there that are saying, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that at all. And one of them is Mike Gonzalez. He's a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation. He's written a book with Catherine Gorka, Next Gen Marxism, What It Is and How to Combat It. Mike Gonzalez, welcome to the program.
Hey, Rich. How are you? Thanks a lot for having me on. I love that rendition of the manifesto. Obviously, you wouldn't surprise you that I go through that passage a lot. In fact, I have read that passage in German. I think that oppressor and oppressed in German is Unterdrücker und Unterdrückte. But I'm learning German by reading the manifesto in German and checking it against the English.
Wow. Well, that's pretty impressive.
That's how nerdy and bored I can become.
That's what you do when you're a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, right? That's cool. Somebody's got to do it. Well, Mike Gonzalez, I think it's good that you do those things because people really do need to understand what's going on. And I think some of us understand, and then there's folks like you on the front lines that really understand how pervasive, how deep the nature of Marxism and American culture is today. And you've written about it in your book. And through your scholarship at Heritage and through your career, I'm sure you can highlight a lot of what's going on, plus your background. Tell us a little more.
Let me take 15 seconds because you said I'm on the front lines. The guy who's on the front line is Mario Torres, that janitor at Columbia who fought millionaire trust funder who's a professional Marxist. Mario Torres, he's got a GoFundMe page right now. He defended civilization at Columbia. I cannot praise that young man enough. He's not young. He's in his 40s. He's a lot younger than me. Anyway, just wanted to get that because you said the front lines of the struggle, and I think he is in that front line of the struggle.
That's
absolutely
true.
I'm talking about, right? But look, what Katie and I set out to do was expose all this. Say, look, this is what has happened since the 1980s. Campuses have been taken over by the radical students of the 60s. Now, obviously, that generation is dying out, but they have taught enough people that the people they have taught are now deeply entrenched. In fact, we found an article in the New York Times, of all places, that was written in October, I think 17th of 1989 by Felicity Barringer, who had been the Moscow bureau chief for the New York Times. And she said, something really odd is happening. Marxism is being defeated in Eastern Europe and in the Soviet Union, and it is flourishing in U.S. campuses. And this article, if you go through it, it's very clairvoyant. I mean, obviously, Ms. Barringer knew communism, and she's saying, and it's thriving not in the departments of economics, it's thriving in the humanities, it's thriving in the law schools. It just so happens that same year, earlier that year, a group of legal scholars had founded critical race theory. It just so happened that same year, Greenpeace was taken over by these pro-Soviet sycophants who realized that that Marxism was dying and they needed to find another front to carry out the Marxist dream. And Patrick Moore, the founder of Greenpeace, eventually leaves it and writes about this. So Katie and I wanted to demonstrate how this begins to happen. And once you demonstrate what the illness is, what the disease is, you can start coming up with remedies.
Folks, we're on with Mike Gonzalez. He is the senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and his book, Next Gen Marxism, What It Is and How to Combat It. And we're seeing so much of that on college campuses across America right now. I want to dig into a little bit of that straight ahead. Folks, let me give you the number in case you want to ask Mike Gonzalez a question. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. The best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You think this will translate to the Jewish students who are facing anti-Semitism here on campus?
So I actually met a lot of Jewish students that are in the encampment. And I think it is really unfortunate that people don't care about the fact that all Jewish kids should be kept safe and that we should not have to tolerate anti-Semitism or bigotry for all Jewish students, whether they are pro-genocide or anti-genocide.
There we go. It's pro-genocide or anti-genocide. It's oppressor or oppressed, right? This is how they frame it each and every time. Of course, that is Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. You may know her better as the Congresswoman who said, some people did something in reference to the 9/11 attacks on New York City and this country. And our guest, Mike Gonzalez, Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, author of the book Next Gen Marxism, What It Is and How to Combat It, co-authored by Catherine Gorka. Mike Gonzalez, when you hear Ilhan Omar make this statement that, it's unfortunate about the, genocide, pro-genocide, this distinction that she makes, what's your reaction to that?
I was just disgusted by that. I do not know how this woman gets reelected in Minnesota. For her to say that, for her to label, by the way, like 99% of Jewish people are Zionists because they understand that there needs to be a place that is a homeland for the Jews. America has been a great place for Jewish people. I mean, ever since General Washington wrote a letter to the synagogue in Rhode Island and said, we will not allow any bigotry. He would roll over in his grave if he found out what was happening in campuses today. Washington would, and if he heard Ilhan Omar. But to cast Jewish people who are pro-Zionist as pro-genocide is to put a target on their back. It's just beyond belief.
Yeah, it really is. But it seems right in line with the modern day American Marxist and the movement that they have afoot in this country, no?
No, look, and that is, so why do we call the version of Marxism we're seeing today Next Gen Marxism? Because it has evolved, right? It's gone through at least two iterations, right? One in the 20s, 30s, through the 60s, when it became cultural Marxism, and then it came to America and it became Next Gen Marxism here in America. But that part about the oppressed and the oppressor, that's pure, unadulterated, undistilled Marxism. You read it. That was written by Karl Marx and his sugar daddy, Friedrich Engels, in 1848. There are other parts that are, oh yeah, no, he treated
El Papichulo.
Yeah, El Papichulo. He treated him awfully, El Papichulo. Even though Engels bankrolled Marx, when Marx cheated on his wife and had a kid out of wedlock, he convinced Engels to say that he was the father of that kid. And then afterward, after Marx died, Engels said, I can't do this anymore. That kid was Marx. And so anyway, look, there are other aspects of Marxism that also remained unchanged. The fact that he wanted to abolish the family, the fact that he wanted to abolish the nation state, the fact that he wanted to abolish private property and God, right? None of those things have changed. The Marxists of today, the BLM Marxists, the Marxists, the marching on the Lincoln Center in New York, or Columbia University, or NYU, still want all these things. But in other ways, Marxism has changed. It's become next-gen Marxism. No longer is the revolutionary supposed to be the worker. The worker, as later Marxists found out, wanted no piece of revolution. The worker was patriotic. The worker loved his family. The worker worshiped God. So what they have found is they want to have the members of the so-called marginalized sexual and racial groups be the revolutionaries and fill them with grievances. That has changed. That is next gen.
And it's remarkable the way it's working, right? You've got exactly what you've said. You've got the racial grievance, the sexual grievance, and it seems like it's nonstop every day with something new.
But it's not working, though. People named Valdez and Gonzalez want none of this. They're walking away from the left. For this reason. They're walking away from the left for this reason. I travel a lot to the Rio Grande Valley. Obviously, I go to Miami. I'll be in New York next week. I have never, in a Rio Grande Valley restaurant or a Miami cafecito shop or in a bodega in the Bronx, I've never heard anybody say Latinx.
Right.
It's
That's true.
Fingers on a chalkboard, right? So this is what we're seeing, the great migration of so-called Hispanics away from leftist politics because they can't stand this. So in a way, it's backfiring.
Yeah, that part I would say, yeah, with Hispanics, it definitely is. I think we're seeing, even with Black Americans, when you look at a lot of these issues, they just don't resonate with these cultures that still embrace a lot of machismo and traditional gender roles, if you will. But it seems to have just taken flight on college campuses and those, I guess the college elites.
Yeah, well, that's the fight that we saw between Torres and this kid Carlson. He's not a kid; he's a 40-year-old professional Marxist, a rich white guy, a millionaire, with a $2.3 million townhouse in Park Slope. That really kind of boils down to what's happening in the country. The woke are super accredited, super white, but they're only like 8%. But they're in control of they're the gatekeepers of the cultural institutions, so they exercise a lot of power. They punch above their weight. Yeah,
well, that's where you're here to stop that. Tell everybody about how they can get a copy of the book.
Well, Katie always says, we do podcasts every day together, and she says, go to your local bookstore and buy that. No, go to Amazon, okay? Yeah, right after this, in the next break, in the next commercial break, go to Amazon and buy Next Gen Marxism by Mike Gonzalez and Katie Gorka, because you get it in 2 days. It's simple.
Yeah, I agree. And I always tell people, buy 2 copies, one for yourself, one to give away. This is good reading that people are going to, really get a lot of food for thought and enjoy. Again, the name of the book is Next Gen Marxism, What It Is and How to Combat It, written by Mike Gonzalez and Catherine Gorka. Now, Mike Gonzalez, if people want to follow the work you're doing, the scholarship that you're involved in at the Heritage Foundation, how do they find you? Are you on social media? Is there a website? Where do they go?
I'm easily Googleable. I'm very active on Twitter, I guess now X. My name is Gonzalez in Latin. My handle is Gundisalvus, Gundisalvus, at Gundisalvus. One of my tweets today went viral, like 187,000 views. Because it's just so I'm easily found by heritage.org, my employer, the Heritage Foundation. You can find me there. I'm always in media, on TV or radio, but I'm online a lot. In my books, I've written a couple books now, about 4. And this one, Next Gen Marxism, is selling very well because for unfortunate reasons, it's come out at the right time.
Yeah. It is unfortunate that we're facing this in so many levels. But the good news is we only see these types of radical, crazy demonstrations on election years, right? In 2020, we had George Floyd, and now we have this. It's just, it's crazy to see that happens if that's where we are. Mike Gonzalez, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I want to thank you for being with us.
Rich, thanks a lot, man. Good night.
Yes, sir. Un placer. All right, folks, we will continue with our discussion straight ahead. The phone number, 833-4825-337, 833-4-Valdez, and more discussion to come. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, so there's a new study out, and this study has researchers from York University who recruited 66 female college students and asked them about their social media use. And the conclusion, well, we're going to get into what the conclusion was momentarily, but it's really interesting to see how it plays out. One of the authors of the study is Jennifer Mills. She's a psychology professor at York University, and she was on Canadian channel CP24. Listen to this.
We didn't have as hard a time getting participants for the study as we expected we might. When we were in the planning stages of the study, the student who ran the study and I were thinking, are we going to be able to find young women who are interested in taking a break from social media? But as soon as she posted the study, of course, there were lots of signups. That wasn't an issue in the end.
So what we're talking about here is it time to take a break from social media, or what they're calling a social media detox, and how taking a break from social media could have a huge impact, in particular, on a woman's body image. Researchers at York University, again, recruited 66 female college students and had half of them continue their social media use as usual, while the others were told to avoid Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and other platforms for 1 week. What they found was the women who stopped using social media had a significant boost in self-esteem and body image. How about that? Now, I'm wondering, how do you know when it's time for an actual social media detox? Well, for that, I want to talk to a holistic nutritionist, Janna Johnson. Welcome back, Janna.
Hey, Rich, how are you?
I am wonderful. I am not on a social media detox. I'm also not a woman, but I might consider it. Maybe you could talk me into it.
I don't know if I'm going to try to do that one.
So tell us, what are your thoughts on this study? It makes sense to me. I think that I've been hearing this since I was a kid, right? 17 magazine, Elle magazine, all of these magazines that were targeted at young girls, they were saying it caused body image problems. These girls wanted to be, rail thin models. Now the magazines have been replaced by the electronic screen in their hand, Instagram, TikTok, and whatever, with girls that, and it's even easier now to airbrush because everybody's become a model. And I think that's what's part of the problem. But what do I know?
I mean, I absolutely agree with you. When I was growing up, and I was born in 81, we just had the magazines like you mentioned, and, supermodels was a big thing. But we didn't have social media. And so I do agree with the study. And I know for myself, when I have a break, I feel better, right? You're not constantly feeding your mind with negativity or perfection. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah. And what's interesting, and I don't want to get too off topic, but I find it interesting with these algorithms. And I think Instagram has probably the best algorithm that I find, because whatever I'm into that day works out, right? Well, if I'm looking at political content, it gives me a lot of good political content. I'm like, oh, this is good. I'll use this on the show. But if it's funny stuff, if my friends send me a funny meme, which they do all the time, I'll look at that and I'll laugh. And then I'll see all sorts of funny things in these videos that just make me laugh out loud, and people think I'm nuts. But it's really funny, and it's a tremendous source of enjoyment for me. I have such a good time watching this stuff. And I think, it's designed for you to get kind of hooked on it and get stuck in that little rabbit hole. But sometimes it's a good rabbit hole, especially if it's, positive quotes, Bible verses. I get stuck in all these rabbit holes. Next thing you know, I'm sending everybody, I think I'm a preacher. I'm sending them all sorts of stuff. But so I think sometimes there's a plus side to the social media addiction or whatever it is. But is there a telltale sign for women when they feel like, they've reached their limit, they've had too much? When is the right time for them to put the phone down?
Yeah, I think for me, it's whenever you can't put it down, right? Like if you sit down and you're like, you know what, I just need to sit for 5 minutes and take a break. And if an hour later you're still on your phone and you can't get off, that might be a sign. You take a break and you think you're just going to sit there for a few minutes and you are going to do something else, right? Do a chore or task, and then you end up getting sucked into that vortex and not doing anything at all that's productive. I think when it gets to that point and you can't pull yourself off of it, it's time to take a break.
What do you think leads to that? Is that just like why people smoke, like a nervous habit? Or is there something more to it where, you're talking to somebody at a dinner table or something, or there's conversation and somebody just casually picks up their phone and just starts scrolling Instagram stories and, half paying attention to you, half paying attention to their phone? Is this, I'm sure they don't do it to be disrespectful or rude or anything like that, but they don't realize that could come across that way. And I'm thinking they're doing it because it's likely a habit that they just don't know that they have, or a habit that they don't know how to break.
I mean, I agree with that. I think it's an addiction, and I think people are just, kind of like what you said earlier, right? The algorithm. You get more and more stuff that keeps popping up that you're interested in, and you keep scrolling, and more stuff comes up. And it's like it's an addiction, and then you just get stuck in that, and it's really, really hard to get out of it. And, and I've been talking to people, and they are doing what you just said, where they're looking through their phone, and I don't feel like they're listening to me. In fact, that's a pet peeve for me. And so, I think a lot of it has to do with the algorithm, and I think you have to be able to pull yourself out, take a break, stop looking at the same crap, and, get away from it for a little bit.
Folks, we're on with Janna Johnson. She's a holistic nutritionist. And one of the I guess the big questions I have here is when somebody comes to you, Janna Johnson, with saying, look, I'm not doom scrolling. I'm not looking at negative news and whatnot, but, I'm caught up. I'm caught up in whatever it is, my favorite music, my favorite artists, funny things, relationship quotes, whatever it is. And I just can't get enough of it. I'm just in it. And they have this, addiction to social media. What's your advice to them? What do you tell them to do? And what should they replace it with? What healthy habit, if that is in fact the strategy?
I mean, so my two oldest kids are teenagers, and they get hooked on TikTok. And so my advice is to replace it with something healthy and give yourself a break where you put a limit on it, right? Like, you don't need to say you're going to do it for a month, but maybe 2 days or a week, and replace it with something that's healthy that gets your mind off of it. Put your phone up, put it on Do Not Disturb, take a break, and just take it one day at a time. And I think that's the way to start, is to just do it little by little.
All right, we're going to come right back. We're going to continue our conversation with Janna Johnson. Check out her website, Revive by Janna. That's Janna with 2 N's, revivebyjanna.com. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
And a lot of the participants said that they would like to stay off of social media, that they enjoyed the break, and that they found that they filled that extra time in their day with things that we know are really beneficial for physical and mental health, such as exercise or sleeping more or getting outdoors or spending time face-to-face with friends and family.
Again, that is Jennifer Mills, the psychology professor at York University, who was one of the authors of this study that we're talking about on CP24, Canadian News Channel. And she says that, participants at the end of the study were able to stay off social media as long as they were able to see friends and family members live and replace it with some sort of healthy habit. And very interesting words indeed. Now, we're getting a reaction to this study and other topics from Janna Johnson. She's a holistic nutritionist. And Janna Johnson, I think we're in agreement that it's probably a good idea for anything, right? Anything that you find yourself, quote unquote, addicted to, that you get mastery over it so that it doesn't control you, but you can control it. And replacing that with some sort of healthy habit. Now, as a holistic nutritionist, I'm guessing eating right has a big role to play for one's mental health, gut health, and overall health.
I mean, absolutely, because your gut health is the key to your overall health, right? 80% of your immune system, your neurotransmitters, that's all in your gut, right? So when you're eating healthy, then your mental health is better. And, it helps people with depression, anxiety, brain fog. you have more energy. You want to get out and do more things. And I do believe that helps immensely for anyone that's trying to overcome any sort of struggle or addiction.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because as people want to get away from social media and go into a social media detox, I think certain things are probably good for them to do. Let's talk about something you just mentioned, which was, gut health. What are some of the things that you recommend to folks that you've worked with to improve their gut health?
Yeah, so it's about what you stop eating and what you start putting in, right? So sugar is the worst thing that you can consume. Sugar it feeds diseases. It gives you overgrowth. It's addicting. It's the most addicting thing you can put in your body. You want to get off the artificial sweeteners and the dyes and all the processed stuff, right? Take all of that out. Start taking a probiotic. Eat vegetables. Have healthy fats and protein, and maybe not so many carbs and starches. Doing that does a whole lot for your gut health, your energy, your sleep. Everything.
So what are some examples of foods that you'd recommend?
Healthy fats like avocados, nuts, olives, coconut products that are unsweetened. Doing a lot of vegetables, but, staying away from the super starchy ones. Having dark chocolate, but the kind that doesn't have so much sugar in it. Learning to read a label. Look at the grams of sugar, but then look at the serving size as well. And, if you want to have carbs and starches, keep it at lunch, right? Not at dinner. When, at the end of the day, you're not going to do a whole lot afterwards. But after lunch, most people are pretty active. So have lunch be your biggest meal and the meal that contains the starches and the carbs.
Now, for somebody like me, I don't eat a lot of sugar, and I've lost a bunch of weight not eating sugar, but I definitely use a little bit of sweetener, but I don't want to, right? There's just not a lot of alternatives. What do you recommend for somebody who wants coffee that's a little bit sweeter than not?
Yeah, so monk fruit is a really good sweetener. You can have it in the powder form. You can have it in the liquid form. It doesn't have a weird aftertaste. That's a really good natural sweetener, and that's one of the ones I like. Stevia is good as well, but some people don't like stevia, and there's some studies that say it's not so great. So monk fruit is the one that I recommend the most.
And when people come to you, and again, let's just say they're anxious, this is why they're habitual scrollers, they're college girl or some woman like the women in this study that are, just fascinated with being on their phone all the time. And is there a go-to item that you can say, oh, you know what, this is why you're so anxious, and you're, whether you're shaking your legs, smoking cigarettes, eating the wrong things, or scrolling like a maniac, it's because your diet consists of this. Is there something that you could kind of pluck out of somebody's diet and say, get rid of this, and you've gotten rid of anxiety?
Yeah, so sugar is typically the number one culprit of all of that. And our youth, especially today, consumes a lot of sugar. It's like over 150 grams a day, which is a very large amount. And they don't even realize it. It's in the juices, it's in the energy drinks that they have. And, they typically eat a lot of carbs, processed foods. So sugar alone and eliminating that from your diet will do wonders for anxiety and depression. So that would be one of my number one tip is sugar, and starting to add in electrolytes, drinking more water, things like that they don't typically get that they need.
Folks, we're on with Janna Johnson. Check out our website, revivebyjanna.com. When we come back, your calls with Janna Johnson and me, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Amigos, we're going to get to your calls momentarily. 833-482-5337. Our guest is Janna Johnson, holistic nutritionist, and her website, revivebyjanna.com. Janna Johnson, we're going to go to some calls. Let's go to Sue from Schwenksville, Pennsylvania, WXDE. Sue, go right ahead.
And good evening to you and your guest. So I have ADD, as Rich does.
Me too.
And I don't take anything for it, but recently I discovered I belong to a group on Facebook for ADD people, and people were suggesting mushrooms. So I've been taking a supplement that has lion's mane, cordyceps, and reishi mushrooms in it, and I have discovered that it really is helping me to concentrate and be calmer. So I wonder if your guest knows anything about that. I mean, I'm really kind of shocked at how well it's working for me.
Janna Johnson, tell me what you know about shrooms for ADHD.
Yeah, so they're adaptogens, and they can really, really help people, just adapt to the needs of their body. As long as you are not like one of those people that have a mold toxicity, sometimes it can actually make you feel worse. But that is a really good supplement to take that has those things in there, and it does help your parasympathetic nervous system. And also things like magnesium and fish oil, healthy fats, those also help as well. And then getting off of dyes and sugars helps immensely with anyone with ADD.
Wow. Sue, thank you for the call. Don't hang up on Sue. Get the information on exactly what she's taking. I want to try these mushrooms. Let's see. I think we have time to go to Jane, Saratoga, New York, WDGJ. Excuse me.
Whatever. Yeah.
I'm having an ADHD moment. Jane, go right ahead. You're on with Janna Johnson.
How are you? Yeah. I don't want to contradict anything, but I'm finding, what is good in life. And we always worked it out with the kids I worked with. It's good to have a healthy diet and all that, but you have to work on feeling healthy in your mind, and sit down with kids and say, hey, why don't we put our phones down and let's all go sit outside. Let's all talk to each other, or let's bake some, I don't know,
No, right. Listen, I think I get the gist of it, Jane. And Janna Johnson, your thoughts on people grounding, going outside, and becoming one with the earth.
I mean, I agree with everything that she's saying. As a mom of three, it all boils down to finding out what it is that they're so drawn to, and then fixing the root cause of it. And as a mindset expert, that's exactly what I do. It's like, okay, well, why do you have an eating disorder? Because I can give you all the tools, but until we figure out why and what's causing it, it's going to keep coming back. And I love what you're doing with, just putting them to a different activity that's healthy and outside.
All right, Janna Johnson, we're going to pause it right there and let everybody know your website again is revivebyjanna.com, revivebyjanna.com. Check everything out there. She's got a lot on there. It's a good website. Janna, I want to thank you for being with us. I really appreciate it. Thanks for staying up late.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You bet. All right, folks, it's Open Phone America, and it's coming up right now. Give us a call, 833-4-VALDEZ.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3 of the program. It's the Tuesday night edition of the show. 833-4825-337, 833-4-Valdez is our phone number if you want to join our late night national town hall conversation. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you all tonight and discussing a number of things. One of the things I saw today, in addition to all of the news headlines that we've been talking about, and we've had a few tonight, and I just want to recap those before I jump into anything else. Obviously, we talked about Marxism in America, this new next generation Marxism. We talked about how it's affecting college campuses, and we also talked about the reaction to Biden's anti-Semitism speech and how some of the Jewish organizations that are out there are less than pleased, right? Less than satisfied. And I think they held back. They were reserved in their response with respect to what he said about Holocaust Remembrance Day. And I guess that's fair because they want to have a good working relationship with him. And they don't, not like me, where they throw bombs and make fun of the guy. But it leaves much to be desired. That's for sure. And the other stories that we were looking at this evening, you know, obviously when is it time for a social media detox? That was an interesting topic, and I enjoyed that conversation. And I also want to talk about some stuff that I've seen throughout the day. And one of the things I saw earlier today was a podcast, and it was a podcast, one of those video podcasts that's on social media, and the folks are having discussions, right? It was on Instagram. And there was a woman wearing, I don't know if burqa is the right term, but it's what I understand to be a burqa. She had like a hijab on, a face mask on, as well as the full out dress, Middle Eastern female dress. And she was giving her perspective on a lot of things, not the least of which was her opinion on race, on how she could disparage whites, but whites could not disparage her because somewhere along the way, excuse me, I'm being tempted to sneeze. Somewhere along the way, the definition of racism was rewritten from what most of us understand it to be to what the, college definition currently is. Right, and I think the current college definition, let me Google it and see what comes up with. What is racism? What is racism? All right, well, the definition that comes back here is, hold on, bear with me. The belief that different races possess distinct characteristics, abilities, or qualities, especially so as to distinguish them as inferior or superior to one another. All right, that's actually what I believe it to be as well. But many of the leftist elites, they go with a different definition where they say it is impossible to be racist against a white person. A black person, a Middle Eastern person, an Asian person, a Hispanic person cannot be racist against a white. So you can't say things like, oh, these whites are blah, blah, blah. They're saying they make the case that can't happen because whites have the power, because whites are the majority. Now, I guess it's something they learned in college, and so they presume it to be true. But my entire life, I've always seen racism as looking at someone and treating them differently and wrongly because of their race. And that seems to be on par with the definition that Google is giving me from the Oxford Language Dictionary, which is, again, the belief that different races possess distinct characteristics, abilities, or qualities, especially so as to distinguish them as inferior or superior to one another. So different races. It didn't say that, the white race is incapable of being ridiculed or made, oppressed through racism. So anyway, I say all of that to say this clip that I came across, really interesting, right? There's a black guy, there's a white guy, and then there's another girl on there. So it's 4 people, along with the girl who I'm going to say appears to be Muslim. And she makes her comments, and then they weigh in, and it's such an interesting exchange because I think the girl might be Hispanic. One guy is white, one guy is black, and this woman is again Middle Eastern looking and seems to be wearing a Muslim attire. But what do I know? And the definition of things that she gives is just so out of whack. But so many people believe this to be true. Listen to this.
White people cannot have opinions on this topic.
Oh my God.
That's so ignorant, bro. You are white skinned.
Okay, but I'm talking about my race. I'm not talking about my colors.
The black women have had it a lot harder, but every person on planet Earth should have that choice.
No, not white people.
Oh my God. Wow. You sound just as racist as them.
You can't be racist to white people. It's called prejudice. Google if you can be racist to a white person. When you breed dogs, they always say the great-grandparent, the grandparent was like this, like this, like this. Genetically, you take up certain traits of your family members. You're telling me there was once upon a time white people that used to eat people that look like you, but I'm supposed to go have sex with their great-great-grandchildren and feel okay with that? No.
Us on the show, we love white people.
I love white people.
I can coexist with you, but what I can't do is think that you guys will ever understand where any of us are coming from.
Wow. So, again, there was so much there to unpack. But this is the current state of affairs of these young people. Now, I'm not going to say all young people, but these young people. And the reason I don't say all young people is because, I FaceTimed with my daughter, who's a student at Liberty University, and we were talking, and she was just telling me how refreshing it is to be able to have a conversation about gender and not fear getting canceled. And she said, we all kind of agreed, everybody in the discussion, that boys are boys, girls are girls, and we should probably, each stay in our own lane. And she said, and it's nice to not look over your shoulder. She said, if I said something like that in New Jersey, we'd be in a world of hurt. And it really is eye-opening that this is the position that we're in America. But this girl starts off by saying, white people can't have an opinion on this. Now, this, again, is something I think is it's bad. Everybody should have an opinion whatever they want, right? Tons of people talk smack about me, and I don't say, oh, no, you're not allowed to have an opinion on this. You're this or you're that. Come on. You can't do that. That's a cop-out. You let people have an opinion about whatever you've got. You do your best to try to disprove, whatever it is that they believe about you. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. It's that simple. But the next thing she says is that I believe that some of my ancestors may have eaten these people, and how could I ever lay with a white person who, ate my ancestors or something like that. And again, this is a interesting thing, but it's kind of a built-in generational racism to say that you can never, commingle. Now, I understand people wanting to maintain relationships inside of their race or their ethnicity or their faith or their cultural affinity. I get it, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I married a woman of Hispanic descent. I don't see an issue with that. My brothers didn't, and I don't see a problem with that either. I understand the benefits in both equations, right? So I don't have an issue with that. And I don't think you're a racist if you say, or if you tell your kids, marry a nice Hispanic boy. I don't think that's bad. I really don't. That doesn't mean don't marry somebody else that is not in your race. It just means, keep it in the family. Now, I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing. I tend to believe it's a good thing. Why? Just for compatibility reasons, right? Just imagine you're growing up and, the challenges I went through with my wife at the time, rearing our children, we had questions about faith. We had questions about how we're going to, proceed with church, how we're going to proceed with discipline, how we're going to proceed with lots of things, right? There are many approaches to parenting that some women are very well-versed on, some men not so much. Maybe that's a sexist comment, but it was the case in for me and for all of my friends. So I understand that these things exist, and vice versa, right? Men may have quite an array of knowledge on a certain topic, and then women may not be up to speed on that particular topic, and you can bring your woman, your spouse up to speed on that. But that's not what this girl's saying. She's saying that you're not allowed to have an opinion. You can't be with these people. We can coexist, but I can't really mess with you because, whatever. And again, that's her right as well. But the idea that you can't be racist to a white person when we see so much of it on a regular basis is just shocking to me. Anyway, we're going to get to your calls and that Columbia University story and a bunch of other stuff straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So get a load of this one. I'm scrolling, and all of a sudden, what do I see? I see the governor of New York making the most outrageous comment that black kids in the Bronx don't even know what a computer is. She then goes on to say how they could change the face and landscape of technology. Hold on, I thought you said they didn't even know what computers are. Listen to Governor Kathy Hochul.
Young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word a computer is. They don't know. They don't know these things. And I want the world to open up to all of them, because when you have their diverse voices innovating solutions through technology, then you're really addressing society's broader challenges.
I want to ask you about broader challenges here. Society's broader challenges. When black kids in the Bronx know what computers are, then, and I believe they all do, but if once they know, then we can address society's broader problems or challenges. I've got to say, just imagine it wasn't Kathy Hochul, but it was Donaldus Magnus El Trompito. Okay, with the black kids in the Bronx, they don't even know what a computer is. Just imagine the fallout of what the media would do to Donald Trump for saying that. Yet here it is. We play the audio, we talk about it, we'll get a couple of reactions, and we'll move on. The double standard is palpable. It's just amazing how Democrats can break every rule in the book, and nobody cares. Governor Kathy Hochul. Play that one more time. It's pretty short, but man, is it powerful.
Young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word a computer is. They don't know. They don't know these things. And I want the world to open up to all of them, because when you have their diverse voices innovating solutions through technology, then you're really addressing society's broader challenges.
Then you're really, again, I don't even understand what she means by this. This reminds me of Joe Biden on with Charlemagne the God saying, look, if you don't know if you're voting for me or voting for Trump, then you ain't black. What? Excuse me, sir. Who are you? Right? How do you decide who's black or not black because of how they vote? Is that not the definition of racism? Is Kathy Hochul not a racist for making such a statement, or at least using racialist language? Yes, she is. Of course she is. She's suggesting that these kids don't know anything because they're black. At least that's the suggestion I get. You could make the argument that she's trying to make the suggestion that blacks are disproportionately affected by bad schools or et cetera, et cetera. But the bottom line is it's not true. It's not true that these little kids don't know what a computer is. It's just not. And it's ridiculous that this woman would say that and be taken seriously after the fact. But that's what happens. And then you have some people who decide that to do the right thing. Like the gentleman that we spoke about earlier when we had our conversation with Mike Gonzalez. His name, Mario Torres, my age. Actually, I'm 46 now, but 45-year-old janitor that works in Columbia University. He got caught, right? The custodian is a a innocent bystander. And listen to this article. It says the Columbia University custodian who took on a pro-terror protester during the seizure of Hamilton Hall said he was freaking out when the mob stormed the building while he was working, an experience that left him too scared to return to campus. Mario Torres, 45 years old, was caught in the violence when rioters took Hamilton Hall on April 30th, with the father of two caught on camera wrestling with demonstrator James Carlson, who the New York Post has revealed to be the scion of millionaire ad executives. We don't expect to go to work and get swarmed by an angry mob with rope and duct tape and masks and gloves, he told the Free Press. Good for you, Mr. Torres. He said the school could have done more to A, prevent this, and B, to be there for us when we needed them. He added that he feels abandoned by Columbia. Torres was working in Hamilton Hall when the mob stormed the building, breaking through the glass and barricading the entrances as they sought to occupy the historic building named after the founding father, Alexander Hamilton. Isn't that something? This is also the same building that was part of a 1968 protest. So there he is. Good for him. Good for Mr. Torres, Mario Torres, and this idiot that he had this argument with. They were trying to, you got to see this. They're using rope to pry open the door. They're all masked, wearing these kifas on their head. I mean, this is just a barricading of a soda machine. Unbelievable. Anyway, so now he finds himself unable to go to campus, and he's afraid of losing his job. He says his fears are only exacerbated by his decision to speak out against the school. He says, is Columbia going to retaliate and find a reason to fire me? Is somebody going to come after me? So I'm taking a big risk by doing this, but I think that they failed. They failed us. They should have done more to protect us, and they didn't. I think Torres is spot on here. Anyway, he started up a GoFundMe, and he's raised more than $21,000 as of early this morning to support his potential legal defense that, you know, he's going to have to use if his job is in peril. Columbia has not responded to the New York Post for any comment, and Torres's comments come as the Transport Workers Union, which represent many of the university's janitors, said they would sue the Ivy League school after a handful of staffers were allegedly mistreated when the Hamilton Hall was seized by the pro-terror protesters. So there's that. Anyway, we're going to continue with your conversation, your calls, and more. Don't go anywhere. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. Open Phone America.
Will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to it.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Nikki Haley, before she got out of the race, was, I think, head-to-head. National polls I'm not a big fan of, but for the sake of this argument, it works. She was beating Biden by like 16 points, I think. So there's an intact Republican coalition, a country that prefers center-right policies to Biden, and we were going to sweep Congress and the White House like Reagan over Carter if we had Nikki Haley. So that's what an intact Republican Party looks like in an election like that. That's not what we have. MAGA has basically taken over our party. It is the establishment, and it has pushed people like me out. Because it's populism untethered to any form of principle, but to a cult of personality.
That is Paul Ryan. He apparently has his panties in a bunch as he's making these statements. But let's take them apart one by one. Now, Paul Ryan, he is I guess he's most famously known for being Speaker of the House, but at one point he was also running for vice president. And it was at that time that a man I like to call Joe El Baboso Biden turned Mr. Ryan upside down and mopped the floor with Mr. Ryan. Just mopped the floor, like turned him upside down, used his head as a mop and just mopped the floor with this guy. He says that we could have swept the House, the Senate, and everything else with Nikki Haley. Hello, is anybody listening to this? Is anybody awake at this hour? Because I did not get that. I did not get that from the Haley campaign where she bailed out because she couldn't win. People didn't want her. Right now he says, oh, well, that's because it's become a cult of personality. Well, if you make that case, isn't that true of every election? Wasn't Ronald Reagan a cult of personality? Why is it that I'm here? Ronald Reagan was president when I was born. I didn't really get to hear much of anything other than a couple of speeches when I was a very little kid and my parents watching them. So then what is, it's his personality. It's the way he delivered the message. It's why those clips still live on Instagram and Facebook, and they're evergreen. You could use them all the time. Things he said 50 years ago, you can use today. It's because of his personality. It's his delivery, who he is as a person. Now, what I find interesting about this is that Paul Ryan says that Nikki Haley could win. I don't think that she can. And I think that because she proved it. She proved it when she had to walk away. She was holding on and holding on. DeSantis got out of the race. Everybody got out of the race. She held on, she held on, she held on. And for what? All for naught, right? Anyway, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. If I am and you disagree, give me a call, 833-4-VALDEZ. We're going to get to your calls momentarily. Let's go to Sarah, Bedford, Indiana, WBIW. You've heard this story that we're talking about tonight about the custodian, Spanish guy, who had to fight off the white Marxist guy. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel so sorry for that custodian. I saw that in the Post today, and all I could think of is whenever I worked at a school and we'd get kids on the roof, I could call the cops, and I know they would come, and I know that the school administration would support me in trying to keep the school grounds safe. And this poor guy, the administration has abandoned all the staff workers because they send them to the job, they let the kids rampage and break the law, and then he's supposed to say, hey, don't break in this building and kind of play cop, custodian, everything. When the university has let these protesters who are violent and taking over stuff just go about whatever they do, and I'm not so sorry for him. I don't blame him. I'm glad he's union, and I'm glad that they're going to, support him. But he should have never been put in this situation to begin with, and it's a shame that they did that. Meanwhile, these little rich, spoiled Marxists get to do whatever they want and put him in danger, and then guess what? Who's got to clean up the mess? Guys like him.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Sarah. This is it's just crazy to see what's going on. Good for him. This guy's going to become a rock star superhero, honestly, in order to after he's endured this. And I'm glad he's doing what he's doing. I really am. Now, I also want to ask you your thoughts on this racism.
Well, honestly, if you say that white people, you cannot be racist against white people, anytime you put a certain class and say that they're inherently evil, because that's the argument, they're inherently racist, but no one can be racist against them, then you're just setting them up for genocide. Seriously. I mean, think of this country 20 years down the road, how anti-white it's getting, and that only white people can be racist. Then, the Khmer Rouge did this with the ethnic, Vietnamese Cambodians and the Chinese Cambodians. They demonized them, and they went after them. And this is what we're getting set up here.
Pol Pot.
It scares me. Yeah, Pol Pot. And he even though they took a lot of the cues from Maoist China with regards to the minorities within Cambodia, they were very xenophobic, and they turned against them and persecuted them. And they also persecuted, pure-blooded Khmer Cambodians, but they went after the Vietnamese and Chinese Cambodians, and they were very xenophobic, and yet they were very leftist. And I see a similar situation arising here.
Outstanding analysis, Sarah. You should have your own show on talk radio. You really should.
Well, appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome, Sarah. Big shout out to Bedford, Indiana, WBIW in the building. Sarah's a terrific caller. Let's go to another favorite caller here, Diane in Chicago on WGN. Diane, what's on your mind tonight?
Well, thank you, Rich, for the compliment. In listening, I always get distracted on other subjects.
You get distracted? No way.
Like Sarah has good opinions and views, so I sort of take the cue from her and want to. But no, I'll go to what the producer said to stick to, and that was, in trying to understand the trial. I think that jury is going to, or on appeal, of course, he would there'll be some technicalities, but that just goes to the idea that there is sort of a deep state-ish kind of thing that would be lurking around and sort of back Trump, even though he was being undermined by that very entity, in my view, during his presidency. And among them are the people like Hope Hicks. And yet he admires these kind of people. He admires David Pecker. And David Pecker was connected, the Enquirer is known to, from what I've heard, connected with the CIA long ago. So, when it's whoever, somehow, they were a part of its, the things that were in there. But anyway, these people are surrounding him, but they're also at the same time it's like that power thing. So unless he really breaks away and cares about the common people, but he's going to be seduced by this type of thing because in the 80s, he was very much a part of the people that were the kind of moderate, good-looking Republican people. Not to say like a Mitt Romney and all of those are the bad guys, or even that.
No, honestly, back then he was a Democrat, right? He was running around with Hillary Clinton and making lots of friends, and this is why so many of them, I think, turned against him, because he decided to run against them when he did, and he ran as a Republican, and that was the first smack in the face. I think the other smack in the face was winning, and now they hate his guts. But I think you're right. There's a deep state out there, and they're trying to get Trump. The bigger issue is it's court. So while some people are there going to be a witness, it doesn't mean they're a witness for him or against him. It means they're a witness, and they're going to be used for him and against him by the respective legal teams. Right? Trump's team will go and do a direct examination, a cross-examination, as will the prosecution. And they're going to try and, get to the facts, if you will. I mean, at least in theory, that's what they're trying to do. I think here they're trying to just get to a conviction. But the bottom line is, they're going to do that. They're going to do it every time, and they're going to try and do away with any exculpatory evidence. They're going to try, or at least downplay it, so that this is always Trump is bad, Trump is bad, Trump is bad. This is why he's bad. And they're just going to try and get him each and every time. But I think Hope Hicks, her testimony and how she said that, the president was really into his wife, and it really said a lot about their relationship, was probably a more positive moment than not. So I think that's a good thing for him. But you're right. Ultimately, they're trying to stop him however they can, and he's got to keep his eyes open for those situations that may not be as beneficial. And I get what you're saying. Diane in Chicago on WGN, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
But again, this was a very revealing day in court. Any honest reporter would say that. I would recommend you read Jonathan Turley and Andrew McCarthy and Alan Dershowitz, Greg Jarrett, Mark Levin, very talented people, and others. There's some incredible people out there that are writing about this trial. They're calling it a disgrace. It's a disgrace. In the meantime, I'm stuck. I'm here. Instead of being in Georgia, instead of being in New Hampshire, instead of being in Wisconsin, and all the different states that we wanted to be in, we're not able to be there because we're stuck in this trial, which everyone knows is a hoax.
That is El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, Donald J. Trump, El Presidente. And he says this whole trial is a hoax. I have to agree with him. It is. All right. In real life, this stuff doesn't happen. But lamentably, it's actually happening to him in real life. And that is, in and of itself, part of the bigger problem that we have. I want to get your thoughts on this. Let's go to Nancy, Ottumwa, Iowa, KBIZ. Nancy, you're on with Rich Valdez.
Yeah, I wanted to say this Stormy, she don't sound like she's all there upstairs. And go Trump, because I'm going to vote for you.
Good for you, Nancy. I think a lot of people in Iowa are going to be voting for Trump. I think Iowa's Trump country. And I think you're right. Now, tell me, what do you think about these wackos that are testifying in the trial?
They all act like, I mean, they don't even act like they're even telling the truth. They really, if you listen to them, a lot of them sound like they're lying.
That's such a shame.
They sound like they're lying.
Yeah, well, listen, I think you're right. I think Stormy Daniels is making up stories as she goes along. I think she told the truth on a sworn document, and now she's kind of recanting that story, going in a different direction because she's under oath. And that's what happens when you're under oath. You make stories up to cover your tracks if you're a liar. And I think, sadly, there's a lot of liars involved. What I know, nothing. What I suspect, plenty, right? Nancy, thank you for your call. Ottumwa, Iowa, KBIZ. Thank you for your call. And I want to, let's see, where do we go from here? With like a minute to go before the break and we come back. I don't want to cut you off, Al. I know I've got Al on hold. He's going to be next. I guess I'll just not go to Al, give you the phone number, and then we'll come back so we have a reasonable amount of time. Again, the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. With Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez with you straight till 1 a.m. That's a few minutes from now. Let's get to the phones, 833-4-VALDEZ. I want to go to Matt, Bedford, Indiana, WBIW. Matt, what say you, sir?
Hey, thanks for you taking my call, Rich. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was listening to, just want to say real quick, I was listening to Sarah there. She sounded like she was really knowledgeable about history. That's for sure.
Yeah, what's on your mind?
And, well, the question I have is I was wondering if there's any system or anything set up for this year that you know of. I don't know any organizations or anything that's helping to take extra precautions to make sure the election is, to look for like fraud and all that, watching things close.
Oh, sure. Well, we recently had the co-chair of the Republican Party, a woman named Liora Trump, who's now co-chair of the Republican Party. We had her on recently, I think the day after she was elected. And we spoke about this, and we spoke about how they are securing elections in multiple states. As a matter of fact, many of the states where there were issues in 2020 have had many election strengthening measures put into place, and that's a good thing. That doesn't mean that it's a perfect world. I think I often liken this to saying, look, I was walking around, and I hate to badmouth Harlem because Harlem's really not a bad area, but it gets a bad rep on TV. But let's just say I was walking around Harlem with my gold necklace outside of my shirt and somebody snatched my chain. Now, that may be true for that one person that got robbed, but the reality is people are not going to just stop coming to Harlem because one person got robbed. And that's just the reality of life. There are people who've had their cars broken into. They don't stop driving, nor do their neighbors, because they heard, people talk, they become vigilant, but they move on. And I think that's the same thing we have here. We have an election in 2020 that was incredibly problematic in the midst of what we called the pandemic, which it seemed at the time to be a blanket approval for anything and everything, I should say, that we wanted to do to stifle people's ability to complain in the face of the mob. And that's what happened. So to answer your question, yeah, I think Pennsylvania has passed some things and they've revoked some things and they've rescinded those things and they're back and there's still lawsuits that are out. So it's not a perfect world, but they've made some improvements. Missouri's made some improvement. Excuse me, not Missouri, Wisconsin. I think we saw something similar in Arizona. And the reality is that there can still be cheating. There's no one that's suggesting that there won't be. I think the bigger issue is how you minimize it. And when you have an army of lawyers that are ready, that are on top of things, and you've already done it, right? If you're the Democrats, you've pulled this off once. You realize we had these massive protests to lay the groundwork, the cover fire in 2020, and voila, here we are. Now we have new protests to try and lay cover fire, right? They want to, there's a communist tactic to just light barrels of garbage on fire so that people see smoke and fire, and it creates a scary feeling for them where they don't know what's going on. This is exactly what they're doing with these protests. But in a roundabout way, I'm saying Georgia earlier today just passed some election security measures. Governor Brian Kemp signed legislation earlier today that makes additional changes to the Georgia election laws ahead of the 2024 contest because there were a lot of issues about removing voters that were dead from the voter rolls. So Republican activists made sure that happened. They challenged more than 100,000 voters, and they were able to do it. So that law was signed into effect today, SB 189, and it lists the death and evidence of voting of registered voters in their jurisdictions. And that's just one that was approved today. But like I said, there's others. I don't think that we should expect to be robbed on Election Day. I think we should expect to have a fair shot in as much as you can have a fair shot. Thanks for the call, Matt, Al, and everybody else that's on hold. Folks, hasta la próxima. I'm Rich Valdez. God bless.